some aircon in there. That would be very nice. But I think the buttons there next to OK. Yes.
If you can't figure it out, let me know and I'll find someone that can.
If we can't figure that out,
I'll find someone that
then South Africa is, most of South Africa is ISPs on top. Yes, hi everybody. I'm Baden Mankies for those who haven't met me. I'm with Akan. I've got Tashi. I'm not going to even attempt to pronounce your surname. I'm going to butcher it. But Tashi will be co-presenting today. He will introduce himself just now. So the whole idea of today is really just to set a base layer for what WDM is, how WDM functions, what components goes into WDM. And then a new concept. Well, it's not that new, but for the South African ISP and RSP market, it's predominantly new. We'll talk a bit about IP over WDM, purely just to demystify it. So I know some of you guys in the room are IP guys, and the second you hear stuff about optical power and OSNR and modulation and bit rate and stuff like that, it becomes daunting. So the idea is to take a bit of that fear away. Just a quick show of hands before Tashi introduces himself. Who works on WDM here? Who has worked on WDM? So 1, 2, 3, 4 people. Who knows what a WDM system is? Okay. Conceptually, I assume. Cool. So yeah, I think Tashi, you introduce yourself. You can get off.
Yeah, hi. Morning, everyone. My name is Tashi. Originally from the Himalayas. I'm living in Australia. Serving for President. Good morning. Thanks, Byron, and also for this opportunity. I used to do WDM before I moved to IP. Then more registry, and then now with Flex Optics back to transceivers and optics again. So yeah, like Byron said, the idea is to identify at a conceptual level, and then we would see what Byron follows off his choice there. That's pretty much me. Thank you.
So just when we get to the practical session, it's going to be very, very practical because I only picked up the routers this morning, so I haven't even looked at them. So we're going to have some fun. On the quickly, you'll see 22 terabits. That is if your C-band is fully saturated with the most efficient optics we can get today. So what is happening? The only efficiency we can do with optics now is how much power draw comes off of it. So that led the industry to go develop stuff like, yes.
So on C-band, on 50 channel spacing, what capacity can you do per wavelength?
50 gigahertz spacing capacity per wavelength, depending on the optic, but you could easily do 400 gigs at 50 gigahertz spacing, 400 gigs, but then you're using very dense modulation.
That's also a distance. There's also a distance.
Yes. So when we talk about the design portion, and I think Tashi will also touch on it when he talks about coherent signals, there is a trade-off. Yeah. So I think you're addressing modulation, right? Yeah. But there is a definite trade-off. So you can more tightly pack it, but it has an inherent effect that Tashi will go into detail. But there is a impact. It's never, like I said, we're messing around with photons here and light power. Or let's just call it light. We're messing around with light, so it becomes a thing. And there are 1 or 2 guys in this room who actually operate WDM networks, so they physically work with it. And I'm going to say a few stuff, and they're going to roll their eyes and say, "Yeah, it doesn't work in the real world." One of them sitting behind you, by the way. But yeah, so there is the 400 gig per wave, so 50 gig space, 100 gig channel, so it's about 4 terabits.
Yeah. So if I want to do beyond 400 gig,
we'll that's about the stuff. So we're like in the beginning, but we'll definitely touch that.
the optics have changed, which Tashi will talk about the difference between a 10 gig optic, which is a DirectDetect or a NZR optic, and coherent signals. So the interesting thing about WDM, it's ever evolving, right? An optical line system like this, there are two technology factors here. Got the traffic layer, which is what takes the transport signals, and it's actually on the next slide, so I'm getting it off. I'll answer you in this slide. But so we had to expand into the L-band, and then you'll see there are a bunch of others there. So this is just CWDM, WDM. You get O-band signaling and that kind of stuff, but those things are typically not stuff that you will see. Like O-band is predominantly used between fiber towers. The optics are dirt cheap, but they have no range. They typically built in that range 10 to 20 kilometers for expansion. The system's an 8-channel system, it's unamplifiable, dirt cheap system for specific application. So WDM has a bunch of ranges. CWDM, we're seeing less and less in the market. Everybody is moving to WDM because it's becoming more accessible from a cost point. And yet also your capacity grows quite more efficiently. So the WDM system building blocks. Slides on there. Wait, so a WDM system building block, let me stand on that side and we'll work through it. So when you look at a WDM system, from where your router plugs in. So you've had it, if you buy a service from a MFN, a Frankfurt, a Liquid, OpenServe, whoever, right? Let me just name them all, show my favorite. But where you plug into that, that's typically into a WDM system, and there are many vendors, and each one of them has a different way of doing them. Some of them do the same stuff, some of them do something different. It is how you take it, right? But typically, when you plug in, that's either a transmitter or a multiplexer or a transponder. So you'll plug into, typically what you'll see is you'll plug into a device called a muxponder or transponder. So what a muxponder does is it takes different protocols, fiber channel, gig E, data rates, 40 gig, 10 gig, 16 gig fiber channel, 32 gig fiber channel. I think we just had our first request in South Africa for 64 gig fiber channel. Believe it or not, people are doing SAN replication at 64 gigs right now. But so that muxponder takes that signal or that protocol and it binds all those protocols together and packs it into an OTU frame and it sends it coherently across the WDM system. What we will talk about today is also introducing IP over WDM, where you will have a Juniper or an Arista or a Fortinet or whatever, and you'll have a WDM optic on it. So basically what that optic does is instead of sending this signal at that 1310 nanometer range, it's a WDM coherent optic, or let's call it WDM optic, that sets a specific frequency in the spectrum to then be part of that, you get that line. And then you get what you call transponders. A transponder it takes a 100 gig interface or a 10 gig interface, takes that grey optic, so the 1310 plug, or if it's a multi-mode plug, an 8050 nanometer. Okay, 8050. It's a long multi-mode. So it takes 8050 nanometer optic and it converts that signal into WDM signal. So it gives the white light or the grey interface, it gives it color, if we call it that. And then as we talk about this, we'll introduce some concepts as well where you get like third-party transponders and spectral services, just to confuse everybody even more. But predominantly we'll be talking about this when it comes to transmission. So at the transmit or at the traffic point of view, those are the components that actually generate and introduce traffic to the system. Then we have what we call optical amplifiers. So an optical amplifier takes a signal and it amplifies it. I think that's pretty basic, right? So for the car guys, it's like putting a nice little turbo on your 2 liter and expecting it to run quicker and faster. not going to run further, but it's the idea. But we also talk about the conscious amplifier. Amplification is not necessarily a good. And then you get what we call a multiplexer or a demultiplexer. So a multiplexer, demultiplexer, basically the same thing, just depending on which direction you look at it. It takes all those different frequencies and it binds them into that spectrum of light. So you can have a 96 channel filter, and we'll show when we break it down in the next slide. But you can take those signals and then introduce them on the same piece of fiber. Because you need something to combine all those channels together, right? So that's what a multiplexer and demultiplexer does. And then you're going out on your fiber in spectrum, right? These slides will be available after the workshop. You just need to give me a touch some time just to combine slides, but we'll make these available for everybody afterwards with the notes. But then I'm gonna be a bit honest. Not that I'm lying to you now, but I did help myself do a bit of ChatGPT reader notes because I've been doing this for so long that I had to figure out how to just explain this more efficiently. But we'll definitely share this. So that is the basic building blocks and components of a basic WDM system. On the other side, this model just repeated and it flips itself. So you go from the fiber to an amplifier to a multiplexer to your transponder or pluggable. So the setup flows like that on your transmit, and then on the receive side it's the same, and then that transmit side just follows the same route. And amplification, we'll talk about amplifiers. We've got many variations of amplifiers. We'll only touch on the key primary ones that you guys will typically see in the That's super fun.
Just on the transponder.
Yes.
So it takes the grey optics and it puts it on a specific
Yeah.
audio channel. Does it take it down to electrical level first and then back up optics, or how does that?
No, so what it does is, okay, depending on, so the nice thing with transponders, they're pretty simple creatures typically. The transponder is in the 1 gig, 10 gig, 40 gig, 100 gig range, or you get some of them that have various data rates. It gets the Ethernet frame, so it takes it to the electrical level, but it takes that frame, that Ethernet frame, for argument's sake, let's talk Ethernet. I think that's weird. Just quickly, weird does deal with fiber channel. Not a lot. But so it takes that Ethernet frame, it doesn't inspect it or anything. It receives the frame and it packs it into an OTU frame. So that OTU frame sits there, it receives that Ethernet frame, it doesn't care about the bits, it doesn't even know what the MAC addresses are or anything like that. We get it at layer 1, we pack that Ethernet frame and we pass it along.
But it needs to talk Ethernet.
Yeah. If it doesn't help, it's an Ethernet transponder and you plug a fiber channel service in there. So it just needs to know what is talking there. There are cases where some transponders, you'll see them now specifically with IP over WDM becoming more of a thing. We call them plug holders. So predominantly a transponder, if you look at the industry as it is, you get different types of transponders. So you get your ultra long haul transponders that are doing like 64 gig, 64 QAM at 1.6 terabit bit rate or line rate, and they're running long haul, and they start playing with spectral efficiency. So they would set their grid sizes differently depending on the reach of the and do interleaving with modulation and fun stuff like that, right? And then, but typically those are on that Beard, Atra, and some of our competitors. That optic is an onboard optic. So it's an optic built by that vendor because it's cheaper to do so, and because they can play with it on the DSPs and stuff. Then on the lower side of the spectrum, what the typical enterprise and regional service provider or ISP would see, or even a metro network, is you get what we call plug holders. So it is it's literally a card with a QSFP, a bunch of QSFP slots on it, and it takes a 10 gig QSFP, SFP, and on the other side it's a coherent, not a coherent WDM 10 gig, or it's a QSFP on this side 1310, and it's a 400 gig color coherent interface on the other side. So that's typically what you will see. But those then don't translate to OTU layer, they do Ethernet. So pure Ethernet. But with doing only Ethernet, you lose some of the traceability of what's going on. Because the nice thing about OTU is in the OTU frame, we pack a bunch of quality information. We pack signaling data. So you can imagine if you've got a system that let's pretend I'm Meta, and I get to the cable landing station in Cape Town. Now I want to get to Terraco in Joburg. Yes, I'm name dropping them. Anyone that I'm name dropping, it's not that I prefer or anything like that, but I'll just say data center from now on. But so now you want to get that traffic here. But you still want to have some switching information for protection, right? So if you look at, if you do BGP type protection, if you do protection and your ERP or MPLS type protection, anything like that, second you've got a switch. You get repropagate your BGP sessions, which takes about, depending on the size of your network, but this could be anything from 2 seconds up to 4 seconds, which is not ideal. I mean, have you ever seen someone freak out when a TikTok video buffers or a Instagram reel buffers, right? People start freaking out. So at OTU layer, we can do OTU-based protection, which typically switches at sub 50 milliseconds. Now you can see the initial. But the OTU frame has information about the quality of the signal in it. So it will then give you the ability to say, listen, we're running error, so the error rate has increased. The OTU frame is used for that type of signaling. And it will then tell the system, depending on how the system reacts, to preemptively switch the traffic because the error rate has reached the threshold. So there wasn't an outage, but a preemptive. But what you'll see now, to answer long story, to answer your question, but you'll see now on transponders, you'll get 2 different variances. Ones that will do OTU, and then ones that will just do pure 400 gig or gig. But then in gig, you obviously lose it. So it's horses for courses at the end of the day. What is your requirement in protection? What's your requirement in quality? What type of traffic are you carrying? Are you carrying just customer traffic, or are you carrying something that someone has a specific SLA which you need to do, and you need to pull information from that? Yeah, so it will repack the frame. So the Ethernet type of devices, they'll just transmit the frame as it gets it. It will just pass it. An OTU type device will take that Ethernet or 5-channel frame and just repack it into OTU frame. Yes.
Is your OTU then your active kind of equipment, whereas the other one would just be passive?
Yes. So your optical line system, so transmitters, multiplexers, that's your traffic stuff. So that's where the OTU traffic gets generated, or that's what creates the traffic, the light. That's where the light comes from. Then you get what we call an optical line system. So that's your multiplexers, amplifiers, all the filters and all that kind of stuff. That is your optical line system. So that is passive. It gets light, it packs the light, and it goes it and it amplifies it. But if I say passive, it doesn't know what's going on with the traffic. It sees light. It doesn't know what the light is. It just sees light, and it sees the light is this big, and it passes it along. But yeah, so you can call it active passive. So in a case like I know you're looking at building a data center, in a case like where you're doing it, your filters, for argument's sake, are passive, completely passive. There's no active stuff. Second, we start introducing active stuff. That's your amplifiers, because they introduce additional signaling and stuff like that. And we'll get to explaining amplifiers.
So you get the extra error handling and whatever on the active side.
Yeah, that's
so
error handling. Yeah.
Comes out.
Yeah. But like I said, with OTU or WDM traffic, it is what it is. If that thing comes up at 100 gig and you do a saturation test, it's 100 gig. You cannot oversubscribe it. There's no electrical layer that can manage the traffic. A transponder or multiplexer, or muxponder, they see the frames. They know what kind of frame it is. but they don't inspect the traffic. They don't get involved in MAC address, MAC learning. They don't know what's going on. They just see frames, they pack the frames, and go jump. Any other questions? On the
Spectrum services.
I can. I will. It's good to say because when we get to the components that handle that, I'll explain that. It's also a relatively new concept, and people are still trying to figure it out. But it's the buzz stuff, right? We have to do what we know and what we don't. Then we get what we call dynamic wavelength routing, right? So you'll see I'll talk about ROADMs, so reconfigurable optical add-drop multiplexers. So basically, this is a multiplexer. It takes your signals and it passes along on the fiber. You can inherently see there are going to be some challenges because it's pretty fixed. So if you've got a weird network which is predominantly mesh and it's not point to point, you're going to have to do some interesting stuff, or you have to send an engineer to site every day without wavelengths. So we'll talk about those components as well. But that thing, sorry, your name was? Your Nati. So that when we talk about routing, we'll talk about spectral services. Cool. So now, just complicate matters. we talked about in WDM you get what we call fixed grid, right? So you get, for argument's sake, this diagram doesn't show them exactly, but 96 channels at 50 gigahertz space. It is what it is. You plug into that, your frequency width is that big. If your optic uses it or not, that's the size of your frequency width. You cannot put a bigger frequency in a smaller slot, right? So you cannot take 100 gigahertz spaced optic and plug it onto a 50 gigahertz spaced network. It's not going to work. Because it's going to cut your signal. So imagine these as a bunch of lanes on the highway. Because now we're getting to analogies. So let's use an European highway as an example, because South African highways are actually the next one. But so these lanes are that big. You cannot put something wider in that lane, it's going to cut off the signal. And also there's very little space for, as optics grow, for that to expand. So when the industry started out, it was predominantly 1 gig optics and 10 gig optics that perfectly fit inside a 50 gigahertz space slot. They don't need that. I think they actually had, so I think they had like 4 gigahertz protection on both sides of the frequency. But now, as we are starting to talk about 800 gig signals, 1.6 terabit signals, those signals are not ever going to fit in a 50 gigahertz slot. They're starting to talk about 125 gigahertz up to 300 gigahertz. So now we're stuck with specific purposes, but as the industry grows, we had to start playing around with the way we space frequencies. So we introduced FlexGrid. So FlexGrid, basically what FlexGrid is, it gives you the ability to set your channel width to various channel sizes. So for argument's sake, if I've got two transponders that have 100 gigabit network optics, they sit comfortably within 50 gigahertz. We space them, those two services, in 50 gigahertz. Now, Tashi decides he's going to fire up the rest of the Himalaya Kingdom. And he's like, now I want 400 gigahertz. That requires a wider frequency. So depending on the modulation, and that's Tashi will break your head when it comes to modulation and spectral width. But depending on the modulation, you could use anything from 100 gigahertz up to 150 gigahertz. Right? So what FlexGrid allows us to do is it allows us to actually play with the spectrum. So now you don't have fixed channel sizes like on this side, we've got 96 channels or 40 channels or 80 channels. You have the ability to play with it. There is some some fun when it comes. It's always a bloody trade-off. so here you manage power as a general. As a whole, you know, your system is a 96 channel system, your optical power has to be X. When you start doing this, you start playing with what we call power to spectral density. So it's where some optics are, you don't just look at the power peak of the optic, you look at the width of the channel to calculate the total power. And so it becomes trade-off. But the nice thing is it gives you the ability to have lower feeds or lower bit rates and high bit rates, depending on what your end requirement is. It gives you growth capacity. I hope I didn't scare anyone off. Yes.
Sorry, just a stupid question. The relationship.
So sorry, can I ask one question? I should have done all this admin beforehand, but I was just excited to get started. It's the first time for a lot of you that I'm meeting you, so please just introduce yourself. You don't have to do the I'm from the internet thing, just introduce yourself.
Abdullah from 10. Just the relationship between the frequency and the capacity.
Yes.
So I'm kind of like just trying to understand how it relates to what I play with.
Okay, so the C-band, right? You've got 4.9 terahertz with a spectrum. So the width of your frequencies, so anything from 37 gigahertz up to 300 gigahertz, your signal can. So typically systems, older systems, or not older, just more recently, up until more recent, systems were fixed grid. So you had 96 channels at 50 gigahertz, filling up that portion. But those multiplexers would also have certain limitations depending on the type of multiplexer. So you would have where there is like a protection band between the signals to isolate the signals from each other. Tashi, you'll probably talk about dispersion, right? I'm leaving all the hard work for Tashi here. But so what happens in a fixed grid system, predominantly because it was undirected detect optics and 1 bit and 10 bit type of optics, those optics were prone to dispersion, which would mean the signal would drift. So what you would do is you would have your 80 channel system, which would be 50 gigahertz, or a 96 channel system spaced at 50 gigahertz, and then you have what we call a 40 channel system that's spaced at 100 gigahertz. So it's just the width of the line the signal sits in. So 50 gigahertz signal coming out of the optic into that, 100 gigahertz optic, 100 gigahertz. You can put a 50 gigahertz signal inside a 100 gigahertz frame. You can go under, you can't go over. But also in the filters, depending yet again on the type of the way the manufacturer builds them and those kind of things, between these bands or these lanes, there will also be isolation. So they'll try and isolate the signals from each other so that when this signal launches, it doesn't go into that signal. So a multiplexer, typically a fixed filter multiplexer, it's got a center frequency and it's got 25 gigahertz, this way 25 gigahertz, that's why it's a 50 gigahertz system. And that's it. 100 gigahertz, same, 50-50. It will sit in the center frequency of that signal. And you can put a 50 gigahertz signal in there or a 75 gigahertz signal. Or a 100 gigahertz signal. Yet again, it just depends on the type of filter. It might cut off a bit on the 100 gigs and stuff like that. So if you do pure math, there is some frequency lost in a fixed filter system. But that's just because the way some filters are done, there's isolation. When you start talking flex grid, your multiplexers look different. And we'll touch on how they look when we talk about the components. But yeah, so when we talk about your channels, see it as a line, and that's the size of the line, and then there is an inherent relationship between the spacing of the channel and the capacity that channel can have. But that is to do with modulation and did I answer you to a point? Cool. Any other questions before we quickly move on to the next block. Everybody's so happy. So, Tashi, I'll do the intro and then you're next, right? So, Tashi will actually answer the relationship between data rate and signals. So, I hope I did it pretty clearly explain the traditional WDM system. Transponders, multiplexer, amplifier, line. Other side, line, amplifier, multiplexer, transponder. So a new concept that has arisen in the last, let's call it 3 years, so it's relatively new, is, so in the traditional system, what would have happened? I actually have it on, but let's do it. Is you'll have your Juniper, and then, so people can actually see, you'll have your router, and then typically, you'll have your transponder. So when you plug into whoever your service provider is, you're buying a lit service now, they will have a transponder on their system. So here at the bottom, and when we view don't touch please, this is someone's active lab. What do I have to say? Because I can thank you guys for what I pick, right? Can I? So just thank you to NEC for borrowing Juniper to us. And borrowing us our equipment that's in there. But so typically, traditionally, you have your Juniper, or your router, or 40 guys, or firewall, whatever it is. So it's your traffic component. It will plug into the transponder. So in this case, this is a 2x400 gig transponder. It will plug into here, so it's got 100 gig line interfaces and 2x200 gig line interfaces. And then that plugs into the multiplexer, then the amplifier. But what has to happen is, and I think this is for a lot of the guys who listen, is the second you start talking about OTU frames and transponders and it gets a bit daunting, right? Some of us know layer 2, some of us know layer 3 and only layer 3. Some of us only know MPLS. But now when you start talking about OTU and modulation and jazz like that, it gets scary. It gets like, yes, it's a good concept, but I don't want to go